Good evening. Tonight is Halloween and methinks it's time for a Halloween poem. And we're going to do a sort of a parody, a pastiche, nay, a homage to The Night Before Christmas. And we're going to do a Halloween version of that. And it has the same amount of words as this particular Night Before Christmas that children have had read to them every Christmas Eve for many years. And it has the same amount of stanzas. But it's obviously a little bit darker, and it's called The Night They Call Halloween, and it sounds like this. 'Twas midnight on Halloween in my cold, gloomy flat, and nothing was moving but a hungry black rat. The pumpkins carved out by children now in their beds had tea lights snuffed out in their cold, empty heads. Now Katie was vexed with a terrible fever, so we took to our beds as I just couldn't leave her. But sleep would not come to me, not on that night, though I kept both my eyes closed really ever so tight. And then on the landing I heard such a din like the chimney stack gables and roof caving in, so I ripped back my quilt with my heart all aflutter, and a small prayer to God did I silently utter. I crawled across the room, my teeth all a-chatter, determined to find out exactly what was the matter. I opened the door just a tiny wee crack and peered out into darkness, the blackest of black, which plucked at my fingers and sucked at my brain, and as I listened intently it called out my name. Then a rent in the fabric of time did explode, and through it 4 hideous horsemen they rode, all hooded in black with fetid rank breath. Then a figure dismounted, the one they called Death. The frightful steeds stamped, their mouths all afoam, and Death spoke to the mounts as they entered my home. To the future of all men, hear your destiny call. Was decayed, is decayed, has decayed all. Come famine, pandemic, come nuclear war. Come take a dance on oblivion's shore. So with Hell's Gate behind them and the great pit of fire, they advanced with the stink of the funeral pyre. So then came the dead one, harbinger of doom, down the long empty hallway to my tiny damp room. My bowels turned to water and my blood turned to ice, and I dove under my duvet in less than a trice, and I wriggled and squirmed down deeper and deeper as the door it creaked open, and in crept the Reaper. A tattered black shroud was draped round his grim form, encrusted with crud and all ragged and torn. A huge rusty scythe was slung over his shoulder. As his breath left his mouth, I grew colder and colder. His eyes, they were vacant, each an empty black hole, featureless windows in a corpse with no soul. The skin was a weeping, red, wet, open sore. His teeth were a stink in a festering maw. His terrible stench assailed my poor nostrils, the aroma of filth and of homeless night hostels. A long, wormy tongue licked his rotten black teeth, with hair hanging down like a funeral wreath. His head was a wreck, with his skull all stowed in, and his mouth was drawn up in a skeletal grin. He crept round the bed full of predatory stealth, hence I soiled my pyjamas in spite of myself. Then he went round to Katie, lying sick in her bed, and he called out her name with a voice full of dread, and sucked out her essence, her spirit, her soul, for it was apparent that that was his goal. And with a wink that forced pus from a raw, empty socket, he crushed Katie's soul deep down into his pocket. And with one final grunt, he mounted his steed and joined his 3 cohorts as they started to leave. And as they passed through the fire of the sulphurous portal that connects the land of the dead with the mortal, Death turned to me, growling with a voice without cheer, and said, "Happy Halloween. It's your time next year."